Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Master Your Mental podcast. I am so excited to be diving into today's topic, Beyond the Mask, with my wonderful guest, Jame Geathers. Jame is an entrepreneur, speaker, and author of the book titled Taking Off the Mask of Bipolar. I actually found Jame because I watched her TED Talk on YouTube with over 100,000 views, all about how she removed the stigma associated with mental illness. I'm so happy to have Jame here with us today to discuss her story, her experiences, and all the powerful lessons that she has learned along the way. So, without further ado, welcome Jame to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Paris.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited to get into this. Like I said before we hit record, I'm super excited because this conversation is so important because everything I cover in this podcast is all about mental health, all about mindset, and all about the relationship the two of them share and how they kind of come together and all those things like that. So before we get onto it, first and foremost, I want to actually applaud you for using your voice in your TED Talk to share your story and your experiences with bipolar disorder and to put that out there into the world and to put that message out there because I know it has touched so many people and has helped so many people. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about who you are and the great work that you've done so far for the world of mental health.
Oh, you are too kind. Let's see. So I grew up in the Augusta, Georgia area, and I grew up in a typical family where we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about, you know, people who had diagnosis were considered dramatic or attention seekers or whatnot. And so I went through life, had struggles, challenges, just like everyone else, thought it was just normal. And it wasn't until I was about 23, I believe, that might have been 25. My physician suspected that I had bipolar disorder, and he wanted to give me a referral to go to a psychiatrist and, talk to someone. And I was like, nope, not doing that. And I just went through life struggling and up and down all over the place. Meanwhile, married, divorced, trying to be a single parent, going to school after my divorce, going to college, going back to get my degree. And it was always really super hard. And I thought, well, maybe it's just hard because I'm a single parent, I'm older, that's how it is. It wasn't until I was well into my 30s that finally I realized that was what it was. I really had to accept it, that it was bipolar disorder. And I finally realized this won't get better until I accept it and do something about it. And it was, an uphill battle, but, still here. So.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, especially that piece you bring up of the acceptance, because I also, as you guys know, was also diagnosed bipolar. And that was a big hurdle for me, is just, coming to that realization. And like you said, when you're in your mid 20s, having the physician say, I think this is a possibility, could be bipolar. Let's see. And then, having that denial and shutting down because, like you talk about like when you're growing up and talking about mental health and these conversations, that a lot of them didn't really happen. And, we were kind of almost taught to, put your best face on, don't really show, too much of anything else going on. So I feel like, with that being a reality, I feel like it does make it very challenging to come to a place where you're like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. This is what I can learn about it and really improve it. So I would love to ask you, like, what was the most helpful thing and for you in terms of really working toward removing the stigma that you'd once associated with bipolar disorder?
I think the biggest thing for me was when I started seeing a therapist. And as I'm seeing the therapist, he is identifying many of the red flags that qualify me as someone with bipolar. And, I think I said something along the lines of that's a white person thing. That's what white people do, because that's how I was raised. I was raised, Black people, we don't do mental illness. That's not us. And he's like, okay. So he gave me a list of videos to watch and different people who are dealing with the disorder, who are people of color. And I was blown away because I never even allowed myself to consider that I had a diagnosis, because wow. The way I was raised was, that's something that white people have the luxury of having. We don't have that. We have to keep moving.
Hmm.
And, when I saw that, I was like, wow, I've been wrong all this time and, not realizing this is a real thing. This is
Hmm.
something that is just as similar, this is serious as, heart disease or, diabetes or whatever. It's still something serious and I clearly have it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I love that how you talk about, like in that moment of realization with the therapist and kind of watching the videos and going through all of that and really being able to accept that. Cause I feel like that is also such a beautiful thing because when you finally get to that place, I feel like, at least for me, like that weight is taken off because similar to you, I was in very deep, like, no, this is not, and just keep going, keep moving, keep pushing, keep, no excuses. Just that's this mentality of like, kind of pushing it to the side, ignore it. It's not real. It's not there. And then once you finally get that, where you're like, okay, this is what's happening and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So many people have days where they struggle regardless of, if they have a diagnosis or what it is. It's just a human experience to have those moments. And I feel like it is really so beautiful when, you get into that place where you can kind of shift the view from
Mhm.
being, such a stigmatized label to something that, has happened and has affected you. But this is something that you can take with you and move forward and pull lessons from that pain and pull lessons from that. And, I would love to ask you too, like kind of on that note, if you can go back in time and just give your younger self in your mid 20s one piece of advice about mental health, what would you say to your younger self and why?
I would say that there's strength in accepting your diagnosis and treating it effectively. There's strength in that. It doesn't make you weak to have a diagnosis. It makes you stronger because you're empowered to do something about it. Because until you accept it and until you walk in your truth, you can't treat it. You can't, make changes in your life that are going to help you function better because you haven't acknowledged anything is wrong. So I would say it's a strength, not a weakness, to accept it.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, especially when you talk about the strength and the vulnerability. Cause I feel like sometimes, when we're really caught up in the struggle, we're really, really deep in that, we don't view it that way. And sometimes we feel like we might not ever get to a place where we can say, this is a great part about me, viewing this as more of a blessing than a curse and saying, just because I've gone through these different things and experienced these various traumas, that doesn't mean that that's the end for me and my life. This means that I can pull things from this, take this forward with me and really be able to, craft that life that you've always wanted and always dreamed of, but does seem so far away, does seem so hard to get to, but to know that you can start on that foundation of recognizing that as a strength. And that's a beautiful thing to really be able to do, because I know that, it takes a lot to really be able to say that and to tell people openly and say, hey, here's some things I've struggled with and here's some things I've dealt with. So, I really agree with you on that. It's such a strength and such a beautiful thing as well. And honestly, one of the things that I really love the most about the TED talk you gave was that analogy that you used about the mask, right? So this taking off this mask of bipolar. And I would love for you to kind of talk more about that. So, what did it mean for you to take off the mask and what work did you have to do to get to that point to be able to remove the mask?
Oh gosh, it was terrifying to take off my mask. And, I called it the mask because that's really what it was. Because as I said in my talk, the majority of my business associates, my friends, a lot of my family had no clue about my diagnosis. And even when I struggled the most with suicidal thoughts and when I struggled with mania where I was awake for days and just not fully functioning, I thought I was hiding all this from people. And what I would do is just isolate myself, which of course is the most dangerous thing to do. And, I'm going through life, pushing through, trying to be a business owner and being a mom and being all these different things. And all the while, I was literally struggling to live. It was just a daily battle. And it was terrifying, but it was also a relief when I did the TED Talk because I was able to just put all of my business out there. And, I gave the talk in my community that I lived in. So it was in Augusta, Georgia. And I gave this talk in front of 1,300 people. And what's funny is I didn't think about the aftermath. I didn't think that people would see it after the facts, even though I'd watched TED Talks many a times. I just didn't think mine would be out there. Um, and it was funny because, I said to the audience, this is kind of my coming out party because I don't talk about this. I had never shared this with people. And it was like a sigh of relief, really, because I was putting it out there, being my full authentic self instead of having to hide something that was a major part of my life and who I am.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I just love how you phrase that and just how you kind of like put that all thing out there, like how you got up there and you got on that stage in front of all these people and you said it, you told your story, you put it out there and it really did cause a ripple effect, because people like me, who watched that talk and were just really impacted by that and by the words that you put out there and by the vulnerability and like you said, that strength inside of you to do that because I feel like there's probably so many people, who probably saw that talk and are like, oh man, like I wish that I could, tell my, like you said, like business associates, friends, people in your life who have no idea, that you've dealt with this, you've gone through this, you've experienced these things. And, I feel like that really offered so much inspiration to people, just seeing you get up there, seeing you tell your story, you have no idea. And I feel like that's the most beautiful thing too, is like what you just said there is, that you did the talk and you're like, oh man, like I didn't think it would be, out there and it would be online, and then it is. But I think that's so awesome because, that really gives so many people the opportunity to really just tap in to you and tune into your story, your experiences, and connect on such a deep level with you and
Mhm.
really resonate with you and relate to you and really see that we all are human, like we all have things that we deal
Mhm.
with and struggles, no matter the level of severity or whatever it is, we all have these things in our life. But if we can, if we have that ability to be vulnerable and to step into that place, beautiful things really do happen from that. And I think it's just amazing that the fact that you were able to do that and just tell your story and just do all of the awesome things that you've been doing, like with the book, and then also as a business owner, as a mother, all of these things, and then also going back to college, getting the degree, all the stuff that you're working towards, working on, and still doing this, still making the time for this, still putting the energy into this because, like you said, I really agree with you that, because this has also affected my life as well. And, many people who listen, dealing with mental illness and, or having friends, family members who have gone through these struggles or are currently going through these struggles. I think it's such an awesome thing to have people like you in this world who, are able to step into that place and say, hey, like, here I am, like the mask is off, it's gone, and it's scary like what you said, just it is scary because I can really relate to that, just getting on here and just having these conversations and being like, oh man, like I just told the world this, like what's going to happen with this, what's going to go on. But just knowing that if you're touching at least one person, that's amazing, shifting at least one person's belief, one person's situation, and really giving them that courage and that inspiration and empowerment to say, wow, if she can do this, if she can get up on the stage and she can tell her story, then, maybe I can too. And maybe I can work towards that place if I'm not feeling ready for it. So I would love to ask you, the last and final question that I always love to ask people on this podcast
Okay.
is, since the name is Master Your Mental, I would love to ask you, what are you currently doing right now in this moment to master your mental?
Oh, that's a good question.
Always got to ask.
Well, to master my mental, I think one of the things that I struggle with still is taking time for self care
Mm.
and giving myself some grace. So, I'm a doer. I like to have a list, I have a plan, I have some goals, they have sub goals, like there's a whole thing. There's a spreadsheet, there's a chart, there's a
Oh
vision board.
yeah. Oh
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And, sometimes I can be a little hard on myself about accomplishing things because there are days where I need to take a step back and just make it a self care day and just calm down. And so I'd say the number one thing I'm doing right now is extending grace to myself. And that's something a lot of people don't do. We think that even with the diagnosis, or even with an immense amount of stress, or even with, 1,500 things, because the mask doesn't have to just be, a diagnosis. It can be a lot of different things. I think everyone at some point picks up a mask and puts it on to hide something they're dealing with, something they're struggling with, something they perceive to be a weakness. And so I think extending that grace to ourselves and knowing we are human before anything else. And, we have to allow ourselves that room to breathe, to take a moment, to understand that the goal is not perfection, the goal is progress.
Mm.
And so that's what I'm doing right now to master my mental.
I love it because grace and self-care are just such major pillars of this entire thing right here. So master your mental, like the acronym, right? So we got mindset, engagement, nutrition, talk about it, accountability, love yourself, nutrition, all those pieces. And like you just said, I also relate to that on a big way, because I still definitely have those days where I'm like, oh, like here's the list, do this, do that, go over here, run over here. And then you start to think like, oh man, like I didn't get this done, or, it didn't turn out the way that I hoped it would. And, we start to get this inner critic coming in and just kind of taking over for a little bit. Like, man, like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be doing this and, over here. And, but I feel like that's such a good thing that you bring up because that's something that we can all use and like and need, is taking care of ourselves, prioritizing our mental health, our physical health, nutritional health, whatever it is that you enjoy, that that you really need to take time for and make time for, I think is such a big step because sometimes it can feel really overwhelming, like especially if you have a lot going on. It can be easy to go right to, oh, I don't have the time, I'm too tired, I don't have the energy. But if you can fit in at least, maybe 5 minutes, or, it could be a simple thing, right? Like making a cup of tea, going for a walk,
Mhm.
texting your friend, spreading love, letting people know, I appreciate you. And just doing like a little thing like that, goes a long way because just I'm sure that this, like the effects of, practicing gratitude and just, being there for yourself, right? Because I feel like sometimes we spend so much time, trying to lift other people up and,
Right.
be there and support them and pour into them. But what about us? How are we going to be able to continue, doing these things and, doing our businesses and doing our routines if we don't pour into ourselves? So,
Especially the
yes.
caretakers and the moms, the people who are looking after everyone else. You've got to give yourself that grace
Oh,
because,
yeah.
and it's so hard because we think, well, I'm supposed to be doing XYZ and I need to do it by this and this, that time. And, but you've got to give yourself that grace because one, you can't pour from an empty cup. And two, you can't pour in other people from an empty cup. But then two, you deserve to have peace, to be okay. And that's where you get that from the grace that you give yourself. Like, okay, you didn't get it done today, maybe not even this month, but you're working towards it. And that's what's important because I know it was a struggle for me for a very long time and I'm a work in progress. But I'm better than I was last week, and hopefully next week I'll be better than I am today. So,
I love that so much. Oh my goodness, such a good point. Just that work in progress, like comparing yourself to who was I yesterday and just continuing to do the work and have grace along the way, right? And not just
mhm.
get into this zone where we're like, oh, like I'm never going to make this or it's not going to happen, but continuing to, like you said, stay on that path, stay on that course, stay consistent, continue to pour into yourself, continue to do these things that are setting you into forward motion, I think is so key and so important. So, I just really want to thank you, Jame, for making the time in your day to come out here on Master Your Mental to share a little bit more about your story with us, your experiences, and just share some awesome tips on really how to remove that mask and how to, take off that mask of struggling with your mental health and really to be, step into this power of being completely and totally unapologetically you and just living your life and enjoying it, enjoying the journey and knowing that, even though we have bad days, there are plenty of good days ahead and plenty of good times and awesome things that we've already gotten to experience. So, thank you and let the people know, where can they find more of you?
Well, first, let me just say thank you for the work that you're doing to bring awareness in our community, about mental illness and about people who are thriving in spite of mental illness. So that's the first thing. I would say if someone wanted to find me, I am everywhere. I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, might even be on Twitter.
All the
Um,
places.
all the places, yeah. And if they want to check out my talk, they can visit the website. It's on there, or they can go to YouTube. The website is jamegeathers.com. And yeah, I'm just Jame Geathers everywhere.
Awesome. All right. I will link that stuff for you guys to check her out and check out her TED Talk. You guys do not want to miss it. Super inspirational, so incredible, and just an all-around awesome human being. So again, Jame, thanks for coming out. It's been amazing. And also to you guys, I want to say, whether you're listening during the daytime or the nighttime, I hope it's a great day. Hope it's a great night. Love you guys. And I'm going to end it on that note. So bye, you guys, and bye, Jame.
Bye.